Unrealistic, on the channel here over at SubScribe. Before we go to the X-Men things, take a quick look at a cover when comics used to be cool. Believe it or not, they were cool. This is from 1941, I think. So Marvel Comics Insider, the creative teams on X-Men relaunch, clouded with nerves and blame fans for unrealistic expectations. This was so good from from the beginning, however far you want to go back to say 1990, and if you cut that off and you just take that time period, I think you can go back, and I don't think you'd ever run out of things to read for the rest of your life. So flowers for the X-Men. So the simple explanation for all of this is that the people writing comics are telling stories, and from a perspective that the potential customer is not interested in. And it's important to not think of people as fans, but think of them as customers, because if you think of them as fans, then it kind of gives you the idea that they're just going to accept anything that you throw at them. The short version is the X-Men is always going to sell, but it will be an increasingly exclusively left-wing, Soyboy, commie audience, the pronoun dilating, sterilizing gang on Twitter. You could fix comics in general by being politically incorrect or by setting them in the past, neither of which is something they're willing to do, because there should be a trigger warning for this image I will show in a second. Because it's a feature, it's not a bug. The intent is propaganda written by, I don't know, limousine liberals. Limousine liberals might be a step up, but it's like, I don't know, AMG liberals, the Mark Wade living in Santa Monica with a $140,000 BMW or something. Because the people writing and running, or he probably has a $140,000 top of the line Tesla and just doesn't admit that he's driving a Tesla. The thing is, the people writing and, dear God, running comics have a toxic far left wing worldview that expresses itself with themes in comics from the extreme left wing point of view. The hat, I mean, that's, you're not doing yourself any favors by being 70 pounds overweight, and then to put on, what is that, a trilby from what was that movie, that book, Clockwork Orange? Anyway, so they've got this far left wing point of view, and it's not finding an audience, which is underselling it. And I don't think comics had bounced back from the Wu Flu thing, the whole pencils down thing. And what was that website that used to keep track of hard sales? And then because they went to digital sales, they couldn't keep track of it anymore. I don't even know if that website's in business anymore, because if you're not going to give honest numbers, they gave estimates for comic sales. I forget the name of it. It was like Comicron or something. They gave estimates for sale. You realize like the Wu Flu's been 4 years now. How the hell this time flies so fast. They were giving estimates for digital comic sales, and you look at these estimates, there's no way, dude. Anyway, so the BLT stuff, the whole trans stuff, that's the popular fad, soup du jour, is an example, because the comic people put it in comics in a positive light, and the customer is not into that. The solution, follow me closely here, would be to not put it in comics or portray it as a negative. And Al Ewing did a 50 run of Immortal Hulk with forget that artist's name. I think he came over to Comicsgate. Really cool guy, really cool art. But it was just the most left-wing, bizarro worldview. If you want to go look it up, look up issues 1 and 11 and read them. They're interesting to see how these left-wing people, how they think, where they think there's like blonde gangs running America or something. The thing is, to put the BLT folks in a comic as a negative, I don't think you're going to see that in a modern comic, to make them the predators or the antagonists. Or comics will show people protesting as a background scene, people holding up signs on whatever stupid topical fad that the Klaus Schwab told them to believe in for that day. It's sponsored by Chase Bank, raging against the machine. But they don't show the violence of these BLM Antifa crowds. This is all a simple matter of perspective. Everything from mainstream comics is from the globalist, useful, idiot brainwash point of view, and there are no comics that show things from the right perspective, where the focus is on the straight nuclear family and tribalism, not gay race mixing, holding signs about global warming. There never is any nuance, and it's so insanely heavy handed to the point where every gang is blue eyed Swedish people and not any other group. Or heaven forbid, make the trans character evil. Obviously, they're never going to tell stories from both perspectives, so comics have sort of painted themselves into a woke corner, but they want to be there, and everyone in the industry, I assume, is on board with it. And if the comics don't sell, well, ultimately, I don't think they care. You get cringe like Superman. Yeah, looking forward. Nobody's looking forward to anything comics. Superman fights the Klan or something stupid, but it's never like a non-white gang. Hey, Superman, you should go to Chicago and you could save 1,000 lives a year. Superman would end up going to Detroit to fight blonde gangs doing carjackings. That's how ridiculous modern comics are. Or Captain America goes to Idaho to fight blonde anti-government militia types. It is more tiresome than previously imagined. That poor Chinese guy who had to deal with those folks. Empire of Dust. I think the movie's still on YouTube. So it's if you want to watch it or any YouTube thing, including this stuff without ads, you just take the URL and you put it in the Brave browser, and you can still watch it without ads. Or the other trick to skip ads is you go all the way to the end of the video, like a couple seconds before the end. You let it run out naturally, and then you hit replay, and there won't be any ads. But it probably depends on what version of YouTube. I don't know if they cleaned up that little bug. Anyway, so this is an absurd level of gaslighting. Or even when some comic has an interracial lesbian wedding, it's a different perspective on it would be to explain how it destroys tribalism, the community, and the nations. Or I guess you could watch it on Rumble and Odyssey. I forgot about them. This, of course, is never going to happen. You're never going to get that different perspective, the negative side of the whole BLT agenda, which there is a negative side of that agenda. Comics are one of the branches of the globalist propaganda machine, probably with Larry Fink's fingers in there somewhere. It's this absurdly left-wing inversion of reality. It kind of relates to something else I noticed about the left. When they try to force you to use the wrong pronouns, the biologically inaccurate ones, or censor your speech, or why the left can't meme, because they have this carefully constructed artificial reality built on people not acting like real people, but acting like the communist dialectic from Moses Mordecai Levy says they will act. And then when you try to do something as simple as use the biologically correct pronouns, they just can't get past it because it's foundational to their worldview. And when you don't buy into their fantasy world, it tells other people that they don't have to either, and it makes the whole thing look ridiculous, which obviously it is. I mean, a lot of this stuff could be shut down very quickly if people just stop taking it seriously and refuse to take part in their bizarro fantasy land. Like, no, we're just going to hire the best person for the gig. Oh, but all this diversity, equity, and equality or whatever, yeah, no, we're not on board with that. We're going to hire people we feel comfortable around. Watch them lose their friggin' minds. So all this crap is seen in their comics because it's every left-wing cliche all the time, and there's never a right-of-center perspective. And when you look at the obese liberal freaks who write this crap from their gated communities and understand that it's not going to improve. So some options are just to read the old stuff, or even better, write your own, including the panel layouts and the scene descriptions if you're a writer and not an artist. You might not ever do anything with it, but it's a more creative use of your time, and it gets your brain thinking in different directions. So I went back and I read X-Men from 1970s to the 80s, and it was a fun, simple comic, not just the writing, but the art style as well because of the printing process. But it looked cooler in a way that the modern stuff doesn't. And maybe the stories back then had to be better because you're limited to the few basic colors they had. This is from 87, so it's a little bit later. The summary of the problem is the comics and the movies push non-Euro characters. But because they follow the Frankfurt School tools of oppression to destroy society, they label people as oppressors and oppressed, so they can't use the non-Euro characters as the antagonist. which instantly kills storytelling because the protagonists are now color coded. There's no suspension of disbelief. There's this cancerous diversity, but the antagonists always have to be blonde or red haired, light features is what I'm trying to say without saying triggering too many hot words. Rings of Power is probably the most egregious recent example, which is coming back in a year, but it's already dead in the water. They had to take a year off for the Wu flu or something. I guess they took that seriously. I don't know why. So I also read a comic from the 40s, the one I showed earlier, and it was interesting in that comic to see a supervillain who was trying to enslave the Earth, and he came up with all these different. Let me show you the cover at least. So he was trying to enslave the Earth, and he came up with all these different, like each continent had its own way to wipe out the people, and like I don't know, different radio waves for one, and poison gas for another. But the thing is, when he's making his attempt, and the good guy team are trying to stop them, is that he was actually killing people. And you saw, like Paris was hit with one of his attacks, and there's bodies on the street. And this was in 1941 when they wrote this comic, and I thought, it gave it some impact. But the thing is, like, comics got away with showing that kind of violence later, which to its detriment. You got to have a little bit of realism. You're the good guys fighting bad guys, but nobody ever gets hurt, and that kind of thing. Anyway, so as the decades progressed in comics, just ignore that little bit. Especially post 1990s, the writing started to get dumbed down. In fact, it really felt like it fell off a cliff, like in the 80s and 90s, where the writers were lower IQ, as was the audience, sort of for the flowers for comics situation. The thing is, are you expecting too much of the X-Men, as Tom What's-His-Face says? You're probably expecting a good story without gay Bolshevik propaganda, but that's what you're going to get because comics are written by Soyboy pussies. This is, I wonder if anyone... This is how you could save comics, is what I was thinking of, is to go back and set them back in the past. And no, you can't go back to World War II and just have them fight the Germans. Set them in the past, or make new comics and just be politically incorrect. Just tell the stories you want to tell. And there's a few people out there who are, there's a spectrum of political incorrectness. I guess you could say the passive spectrum is not including the heavy-handed diversity lectures that modern mainstream comics include, and the left wing would view that as, the Twitter kids would view that as Istophobic and problematic. If you treat characters equally, that will be troubling to them, and then you can get more and more politically incorrect. And I'm sure Vox Day on Arcavum Comics has got he's got comics set in the past in Rome and whatnot. But I'm sure the thing to do is just make politically incorrect comics, and you just do it right from the start. And if you have a way to, not they don't have to be like the Adventures of the Klan defeating Superman. You don't have to go that far. Tell the stories you want to tell, you know what I mean? But don't make Mary Sue's. That's one problem, is why I say it's get rid of diversity. Diversity is destroying stories because people can't tell stories without, SJWs can't tell stories without turning characters into Mary Sue's, which means they're like overpowered characters without any flaws. It just makes them, it's the stoic, super smart POC. What was it? The scene in Wakanda where that Shuri is coming up with, solving puzzles, and the three white guys surrounding her are also like the smartest scientists on Earth, and she just has to put them down and show them up. It's like, that's not how these comics were written. These comics were all about teamwork, and anything recently is all just Frankfurt School Bolshevik kind of nonsense. Anyway, these old comics are fantastic. You can go back and the Diabolical Dwarf, you can go back and check these things out. And you never have to read a new comic again. The only thing that keeps new movies, Hollywood in general, is much bigger than comics, is the fear of missing out. It's a psychological trick that people have where they just have to watch the next big thing. But eventually you're going to look at mainstream everything and go, it's all garbage. You just can't enjoy a popcorn flick because it's a lecture from Spider-Man's girlfriend about who built some building. You know, most people in the audience are like, "Boo-hoo, Ninja, we just don't care. You can't make us care." And I think people are just probably going to fall away from comics and movies and you know, start rolling their own entertainment by way of Odyssey and BitChute and YouTube and Rumble and all these other platforms. Anyway, like, comment, subscribe. I'll see you guys on the next episode.